permission to the Westwood Media Center to live stream and record the meeting. Is there anyone else who would like to record the meeting? Okay, we are going to just do exactly what we've been doing in this land of remote participation. Please either raise your hand, wave your hand, or use the little raise hand tool on our Zoom. And either Jane or I or someone else will be sure to see you. I try hard, but don't always see all the little hands. So please call me out if I don't. We're just going to proceed. So I think, Jane, do you want to call the roll call?
Please. Bill?
Here.
Jan, oh, Jim is not here yet. Lauren?
Here.
Renee?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
George H?
Here.
Angela?
Yeah.
Peter?
Here.
Caitlin?
Here.
Tom?
Here.
George L?
Here.
Diane?
Here.
Christina?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
And Alex?
Here.
Great. Thank you.
I don't see Jim.
He has not joined us yet. Jim, we're waiting for Jim. That's it. Everybody else is there.
Okay, I thought I saw everybody but him. Okay, all righty. Okay, can we do the Pledge of Allegiance and everybody take their mute off so we can do this together? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chris. Okay. All right. So we have a very busy evening. It's going to be really interesting. And I think we're going to hear a lot of good stuff tonight. We're going to start with the municipal subcommittee and then go on to the education subcommittee. And then we're going to hear some final changes, I guess, for the select board and then the planning board. And then we are going to do some deliberation and voting, which I'll talk about when we get there. I normally give a little select board update. So let me find my notes from the select board, if I can do that. There were a couple of interesting things that the select board talked about this time around. I'm sorry, I'm not better organized. I'm in a new place tonight. Here it is. So one of the things that they talked about is a change to the polling precincts based on the fact that Westwood has grown in population. So it looks to me, if I understood the vote correctly, they're going to add the high school as a new voting location. And so we'll be hearing you all, everybody, will be hearing a lot more about that in time. I believe it's for the next election. So that was kind of interesting. There was a long discussion about the bond approval and how great we're doing on our finances. And I know you received some material from Pam. So got great rates on those bonds. So take a look at that material. Really interesting. And then they spent there was a bunch of other stuff too, but of interest to us is they spent a lot of time on the draft guidelines for the MBTA compliance, the multifamily zoning that we have all been talking a lot about and getting a lot of information on. I think they voted to send a letter to the state to talk about the draft guidelines and are in support of the work that the planning committee has done for a year now. So we'll hear more about that as we approach next meeting.
Excuse me, Diane. Chris Coleman, I think, has his hand raised. I brought him into the meeting. I think he wanted to.
Oh, great, Chris. You're going to correct me on something. Go for it.
Not a matter of correction, but just a matter of clarification. So thank you, Madam Chair. At last night's select board meeting, the board accepted a recommendation from the town clerk to consolidate our voting locations into one location. That one location will be the high school. And that will be for our annual town election on April 26th.
Thank
just to
you
be
very
clear.
much for that. I actually didn't understand that. And Michael Walsh here is also correcting me on that. So it's consolidating all of them into one. So thank you for that correction.
Clarification, thank you.
Clarification. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so with that summary, I think we're going to go ahead with the subcommittee report. Who's up first, Jane?
Municipal is up first, and Lauren is going to, the chair is going to introduce us.
Okay, let me just get the PowerPoint. All right, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yes, we can, Lauren.
All right.
So if folks want to mute themselves, Jane will obviously unmute you once you raise your hand, but
Okay, all right, my,
Lauren, excuse me, Lauren, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Jane, we're going to follow our regular protocol here where the subcommittee will present, and then we'll have questions from FinCom members at the end as we normally do, and then from public. Thank you. Sorry, Lauren, go right ahead.
no, not a problem. So my name's Lauren Fitzpatrick. I'm the chair of the municipal subcommittee, and we're going to go over the FY23 budget for the town of Westwood. Right here, this is just the agenda and basically the topics that we're going to be covering, the departments that everyone on the subcommittee that they spoke to, the department heads, and just going to be walking through like an overview of what, you know, the changes in the budget and the expectations, the impacts on the community and everything, and just any, you know, additional closing remarks on the overall budget at a high level. So as you can see, the committee members here, like I said, my name is Lauren Fitzpatrick, and then Alex Yale, he's the vice chair, Jim Ferraro, Angela Hughes, and Chris Pareda, he's kind enough to help out with us on the municipal subcommittee also. So like I said, during this presentation, we're going to be going through the FY23 municipal budget and go over the proposed budgets of the fire department, police department, culture and recreation, community and economic development, public works, and general government. We're going to be going over the overall dollar and percentage changes to the municipal budget compared to FY22. The subcommittee's members, they held separate meetings with all the department heads to review the budgets, which helped to better understand the department goals and their objectives for FY23. And as you can see on this, some of the topics that were noted, of course, you know, it's been 2 years since the COVID-19 pandemic. And so what impacts on each department, any potential impacts, and on the overall community. Also to understand how the budget will help the departments achieve their goals. Additionally look at operational metrics as they relate to the budget and to benchmark against the prior years. Ensure, you know, that the financial planning and the controls are aligned to mitigate any risks that could happen. And then also to just, you know, review the capital plans. So here, breaking down just basically the municipal operating budget overview. So the proposed FY23 budget is at about 23 million. This is compared to the FY22 budget that was at 21 million. This is a percent increase, about 3.73% increase from last year. And then I think we've in prior years, and people that are familiar with this, is that the municipal budget, it's 80%, it's highly salary driven. And so it's 80% salaries and 20% expenses. And so this also, you know, has an impact on things. And so for instance, you know, the staffing, it's full-time. We have full-time staffing is at 108 83, part-time's 40, and then it gives a total of staffing of 223. So that's just the breakdown right there. I'm not going to read every single thing, but you can see though right there. See, and also though to note that public safety, that has the largest piece of the pie, and that's the area that's experiencing the most growth overall. And again, so right here, it's just another overview and comparison from FY22 to FY23 and the percentage, the changes. And so this, let's see, hold on here. Sorry. So you have about an increase, an overall salary budget increase of 700,000, which is about 4%. And what is inclusive of that 700,000 is that there is about, 530, for town clerk, there was additional staffing, and then additional increased cost for the library because of the new Wentworth Hall. And then also for building maintenance, custodial staffing enhancements, and then with human services, there's strengthening the staffing of the human service division also. And then, as you can see, there's a budget increase of about 115,000. And so that's about, for FY23, an increase about 2.7%. And so this also, what's included also in that is with the police department, there's additional training in uniforms. The town clerk, there was an election cycle activity. And then again, the library, the branches and their expenses, they increased also. And then the public works, the DPW, continuing and just ongoing repairs throughout the town. And then also just maintenance activity for the street and traffic lighting. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex to discuss about the fire department budget.
Great, thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy to walk through the fire department budget. Had a really nice call with Chief Deckers a few weeks ago to walk through the details, to hear some of the contextual information about what the department's been up to, what the plans are for the upcoming fiscal 23 year. Tried to do my best to summarize, what I heard from him, what's sort of printed in the book. I also went into depth on a couple of the numbers that's seen increases year over year, just to dive in and understand the nuances of why the increases exist and just sort of the detail behind them. So happy to run through this and then take any questions if there are any. But pretty modest budget increase of 5.2 million year over year, 2.3% from FY22. The sort of one anomaly is training and prevention. Actual spend in fiscal 21 was quite a bit less than what was budgeted in 22. Something that Chief Deckers told me about is that this sort of covers anything that has to do with prevention or education outside of salaries. And obviously, with us sort of coming hopefully out of COVID, we're going to see a lot more prevention training, sort of community events, things like that haven't taken place in the past couple of years. So we do expect those programs to return in FY23 that have been off the docket for the past couple of years for obvious reasons. Staffing was one area I sort of dug into quite a bit. The staffing numbers remain constant, but I noted a negative 1% year over year change for firefighter salary, but 11% increase for the chief salary. And so I just wanted to get a little bit more clarity on why we're seeing a decrease on firefighters, whereas the chief is going up 11%. It's actually fairly easily to explain, which is there was some attrition at the higher end of more tenured firefighters. So we were able to backfill those positions with more junior folks that come at a lower salary cost. So, this is all sort of blended together, but the net is that we're hiring less expensive new firefighters, obviously come with less experience than some of the recently attrited, more senior firefighters, some of whom have retired, some of whom have moved on to different opportunities in the area. So that's sort of explained for the minus 1%. It's not typical that you see a decrease on expenses or budgets, but this is just the ability to hire newer people at a lower salary cost than the outgoing cohort or the few that have left. In terms of the chief salary going up 11%, this is actually just normalizing. When the FY22 budget was finalized, the contract between the chief and the town hadn't yet been finalized. So essentially what they're doing is they're amortizing the value of that contract over the subsequent years that sort of pay it back. So it's not an actual 11% increase. It's just that in FY 22, they hadn't finalized the contract. And so the increase there was less than the actual increase turned out to be once the contract was in place. So I just wanted to dig into that anomaly on the call. So Pam and Chief Decker has helped walk me through the nuances of why that number looks inflated in the budget year over year moving into FY 23. The other sort of piece that stuck out to me was overtime is up 16% from FY 22 to FY 23. The reality is there are some ongoing contractual and labor negotiations that have yet to be finalized. And so the numbers are not yet set in stone in terms of what those contracts will materialize as. And so Pam and her team and Chief Deckers needed to build a little bit of cushion there as those negotiations are still ongoing and the labor piece is not yet been finalized. So we may not see an actual increase of 16% from 22-23, but this is sort of a buffer through to see those negotiations through on the labor side. Some highlights from this current year and moving into FY 23, call volumes for the department, just over half for EMS. The other half were sort of fire-related calls and other incidents that aren't sort of directly attributable to either fires or EMS calls. So things that, smoke alarms and checks on, residences or any things like that. There were 127 fires reported in the town. 16 were actual structure fires, meaning they were of buildings that were on fire as opposed to things like smoke or ovens or, things that probably many of us have called related departments for in the past. They did a great job at administering COVID vaccines for municipal staff and some seniors in town. I think this program was out in the open for a while and then was sort of pulled back based on federal government regulations and taking over administration and coordination. So they did a great job administering vaccines while they could with staff employees as well as some senior citizens until that was pulled back by government and federal agencies. They hired 3 firefighters and they have 1 remaining vacancy to fill in, and that speaks to the 1% change, as I referenced earlier, with some of the turnover they're seeing in the department. Priorities for the upcoming year, obviously with COVID, hopefully in the rearview mirror, or something that we're going to live with more openly. They're going to focus on ramping back community efforts, which will go back to that prevention line item that has increased year over year. They're going to upgrade their self-contained breathing units, and they're working on some departmental strategic plans, succession planning, and increasing operational efficiencies. So I think the key here is succession planning with some of the attrition. I think 40% of the department has turned over in a pretty short period of time. Some of that is sort of natural retirement attrition. Some of that is people leaving for new opportunities. But I think it's good to keep a pulse on just making sure that we have enough experienced staff and that turnover does not in any way hamper the operational efficiency or the quality of service that this department is providing for the residents. So that's going to be a focus, I think, for the chief all year long. And then in terms of capital expenses, about $86,000, a mix of turnout gear, which is the uniforms that the department uses when they show up on calls and they go into active fire or similar situations, and then a replacement of a command staff vehicle that is being sort of trickled down to within the department per sort of normal life use expectancy. So that's the fire department. Happy to go into more detail or answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Next one is the police department. Angela, I believe.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to start out by saying that I really enjoyed my interviews with the staff and the department heads that I met with. We are very fortunate. We have wonderful, wonderful, amazing people servicing our town. And the interviews were great. And so I'd like to start with the police department. Chief Silver. Chief was extremely passionate about providing quality service, and everything that we talked about, was all about quality. And one of the things that that came up last year, we dug into a little bit deeper, and I'll go into that as I go on into the presentation. So the FY23 budget, proposed budget is 5.1 million. That's a 3.1 increase from prior year. The largest expense increase is related to the additional training and uniform, which is a necessity. In terms of staffing, the number of staff is unchanged. It's 46 staff, unchanged from 22 to 23. There's a modest increase in salaries based on contractual obligations. And similar to the situation with the fire department, the overtime projection is still, it's still under negotiation. And so right now it's projected at 15%. And so they don't really have the numbers of what that'll be. So more to come, and this team will give us that information as they finalize their negotiations. In terms of prior year's accomplishments, this is one that came up last year. And I remember there was a question around the successful recruitment, the enhanced staff, cultural, linguistic, racial, general, the gender diversity. And we had a really good, the chief and I had a really good conversation around this topic because he was enthusiastic about the fact that the department has had a lot of success in terms of hiring diverse candidates. And it's a result of being a non-civil service law enforcement agency. And as a result, you know, he's able to cast from a broad selection of candidates. And he, you know, feels very, very confident that the department is now bringing in the best of the best. And he talked about some of the new hires in town and some of the promotions in terms of gender and race. And so I know that that was something that came up last year. And so we had a good conversation around that. And I've actually seen some of the new hires in town. In terms of the fleet, they modernized all the administrative fleet. So the goal is to modernize all of them. So right now they've finished 100% of the administrative fleet, and now they're going to work on the patrols, the cruisers. And so that's going to be one of the initiatives going into FY23. They continue to have a high visibility, you know, throughout the pandemic. That didn't change for the police department. I mean, the way they provided service changed, but in terms of their visibility and the service, that didn't change at all. Another interesting topic was the CCIT and it fully staffed this community crisis intervention team to address mental health and opioid addiction. And, you know, that was huge because the outside services were very limited. And so the chief talked about, you know, we're going to keep that this team in place, and it's not just made up, it's made up of the residents and some of the individuals that work for the town. And so, you know, it's a large variety of folks that, you know, that are part of this team and can handle the demand that is needed for the mental illness and the opioid addiction. In terms of the innovation and the modified continued full operation amidst the global pandemic, you know, we just talked about, you know, how the services hasn't changed. They were just modified just a little bit. And then also as a replacement of one of the staff members, there was an added traffic safety and enforcement officer to address the growing concerns within the town. A couple of the key initiatives is securing the statewide accreditation through the MPAC. Is something that they do, you know, year to year. They're going to continue to implement the hybrid patrol, police patrol vehicles, as long as, you know, it's available, they're available. And then modernizing the equipment and police to meet the policies and to meet the industry best practices. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the capital budget when we talk about the traffic safety. And then to fill anticipated vacancies and reorg the internal structures to meet the needs of the community. And so that's, for retireds and just making some changes within the department as needed. In terms of the capital budget, replacement of the vehicles. So yearly, the request is to replace 3 vehicles. The cruisers are used 24 hours, 7 days a week, 360 days a year. And so, the wear and tear, is natural. And, it's needed to replace, they have a rotation schedule, where they replace 3 vehicles each year. With the possibility of, when possible, to purchase hybrid vehicles. And, this was a great topic with the chief, because it was talking about, the expense of the hybrid vehicle. The long-term pays off, right? Because as it relates to the fuel economy and the environmental health, but then also with the trade-in, and then the police, the chief is excited about, there's a pending grant for electric charging stations. And the plan is to have a couple of charging stations at the police station where, there'll be one for the vehicles, and then for the police vehicles, and then there'll also be a charging station for visitors and residents, when needed, when they're at the station. And so, that he was pretty excited about that. The next is the safety equipment. And so that includes like the bulletproof vests. And, so they have like a 5-year certified lifespan, and funding is needed for the rotation replacements. And then also there's initial equipment for the new hires. The equipment has increased, the cost of the equipment has increased from FY22. And then the last is the budget request for the radio telecommunication infrastructure. And that's used by the police, the fire, and EMS. And this was a really interesting conversation that I had with Chief Silver, and one that I personally was concerned about when I read through the request, because the first thing I wanted to know was, okay, if the radio communication frequency isn't reaching all parts of the town, then what are we doing, right? And so what the equipment that they have is over 50 years old, and it doesn't reach University Station. So what they have is this, it's called a micro, I forgot what he called it. It's a triangle. And so what they did, they have a triangle that goes from University Station to Canton and then back to the police department. And what that does is that allows them the frequency that they need to handle the calls that are going out to University Station. But that's two-thirds of the call volume is at University Station. And it really puts them in a dangerous situation, because the frequency isn't very clear. And if there is an issue, it would put the residents at risk, and then also our firefighters, police also in jeopardy. And so the demand for this is really important. He also talked about, because it's so old, the equipment is only available or for overstocked, right? So the dealers that have overstocked the equipment are the only individuals that can service and provide what's needed to fix the I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. Let me relax here a little bit. And fix the equipment as needed. And then also there's very few individuals, there's limited people that can fix it. And so what he called it was a microwave triangle. That's what I was looking at. And he said it's a Band-Aid. So, that's not always, it's not going to work forever. So the importance of, new equipment is, the town is in need for that. Okay, we'll go to the next.
Let me try.
Got that, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm trying to, well, it's like a, okay, I think. Good there?
Yep, okay. So for library, again, Lizzie was very enthusiastic to talk about the quality service, the educational opportunities that the library provides for the Westwood residents. And so, I'd just like to thank the library personnel for the amazing job that they have done in maintaining the high level of service and increased demands since reopening during the after the pandemic. So for the FY23 proposed budget, 1.5 million, a 6.4 increase over the FY22. Salary increases, it increased by 4.8%, and then the expenses projected to increase by 11.8. So the largest portion of the salary increase is the additional branch staffing. And then also, what they plan to do is they plan to, Wentworth Hall will offer youth and family services as well as recreational programs. And so they'll increase the branch hours there. The increase also includes the library custodial enhancements and the reorg to partner with the DPW. The largest expenses continue to be the library materials, the books, the audios, and the periodics. The FY23 capital budget, the in-use technology, so upgrading and replacing the desktops and the public use, for public use and the staff, obviously, continue use of the technology and trying to keep up with the times, they need to upgrade the technology. The sound dampening project. So this project is, they have on the teen room, which is on the second floor. It was built that doesn't have a floor to ceiling wall, and it doesn't have a door. And so the plan is to have a consultant come in and advise on the best action to take so that they could potentially install a full wall and then a doorway and find a way to absorb the sound to prevent the sound from disturbing, other areas of the library. The bookmobile and the mobile shelving. So the library is looking to take ownership of the old COA van, and that's the Council on Elder. They want to take over that van and they want to retrofit it into a library bookmobile. And it's becoming, more of a demand, since the pandemic, the library realizes that the outreach is really, really necessary and it's important. And so they want to try to do more to ensure that the service is available, to our town. Outreach vehicle is going to, it'll expand the services and collaborate with other town departments. There's a demand for the use of library space. Oh, and so that's in terms of the shelving. And so what they're going to do with the mobile shelving is that it allows them to move the shelves, the books out, and make available space, for people working from home and for students that, need the available space within the library. Recreation, the FY23 budget is 0.52. That's a 3.8% increase over the FY22, and that's based on salary increase. There's minimum salary increase, and that's statewide. And then also there's the department reorg from the assistant director to the business manager was also a big part of that expense or that increase. Additional resources. So the department, they did a program sizing modification. And so that required some additional resources to have smaller group settings for the safety of the residents. The FY23 capital request this year is for the school street playground. And that was a conversation that, we had in depth regarding the concerns that were found during the last inspection, where there was some cable core that was exposed, and then also the handicap accessible mats were no good. And so, there's a need to really repair these features, but then eventually they'll need to be replaced. And then I noticed when I was going through the material that there's a long-term need to have a dedicated space for the community rec center.
Thanks, Angela. I think we're okay. All right. So thank you. So then the next topic department that we have is the Community and Economic Development. Computer's just delayed here. Give me one. There we go. And Chris, you're up.
All right, thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Angela, for covering the new library. I'll just add that if you haven't seen the new library in Islington Village, I commend that you go over there and look at it. It's a wonderful building. In the basement of that building is a huge new room that if we ever get to meeting in person, we might consider meeting there someday, in addition to meeting at the main library. So I had a nice conversation, very informative, very productive conversation with Nora Loughnane, and an informative one, because I learned that she commands a large division that includes building, planning, health, zoning, conservation, a number of individual offices that were consolidated some years ago. And she explained to me that the administrative staff and the staff of those various offices work collaboratively when necessary to achieve a real tangible budgetary benefit to the town. So one good example of that is this past year, when the public health department was really overrun with trying to deal with COVID, they could hand off many of their administrative duties to the staff from these other offices, and that really saved them from having to fall way behind. So for the proposed fiscal year 23 budget, the Department of Community and Economic Development is a 3.5% increase over fiscal year 22. But as I've noted, 94% of the budget goes to salaries, and actually the expense proposal is a 5% decrease because the Building Inspection Division is proposing a lesser for expenses. So it's virtually all salaries. In fiscal year 22, the zoning division hired a new staff similar to what's happening to, I guess, the fire department. They had staff replacement, and a more mature staff member resigned, hiring a younger staff member at lower personnel costs. So that explains the decrease there. One thing I'll add to Alex's talk about the fire department's accomplishments. Yes, the fire department initially did assist the public health department in distributing COVID vaccines until it was the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Governor Baker, it wasn't the federal government, decided to consolidate vaccine distribution at these mass vaccination sites around the Commonwealth, rather than have the local public health departments distribute it. And really, we can debate all night long whether that was a good decision or not. But all the extra money that the Public Health Department spent was grant money to fund all their extra costs related to COVID expenses. So in fiscal year 23, Nora made a good point that she is committed to maintaining our neighborhood character of a town in spite of all the zoning requirements that the state is mandating. So that's a primary goal going forward, is that the planning board and the planning division are trying to maintain the neighborhood character of our town. And actually, they're hoping that the state budget is going to include more aid to the local public health offices. As far as the Islington Village development is concerned, like I said, the new library opened up. The dedication ceremony is scheduled for when it gets a little warmer, probably in a month or two. We hope to have some new restaurants open there. And that, combined with the anticipated sale of the condos, will increase town revenue from that area quite a bit, maybe as much as tenfold over what we were getting there before the development started. That's the report on the community and economic development.
Thank you, Chris. So now let's move to Public Works. Jim, is Jim here? I can't see everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I was late. But here, so I met with Todd Corchin and his staff regarding the DPW. We had a great conversation, and although the DPW doesn't get the same attention that, you know, police, fire, and education get, Todd and his staff take great strides and great pride in their work, which can be seen through the condition the town fields, parks, the buildings, roads, and open public areas. And his building maintenance, I mean, his vehicle maintenance, his vehicles have a 10 to 12 year life expectancy despite all the wear and tear that they take. He's maintained his staff, this current staffing levels, through multitasking his employees or outsourcing other contracts where available. You can see that the staffing levels are just a 3.2% increase, relatively in line with all other budgets in the town. Let's see, some of his challenges for the past year have been the trash and the recycling. With the increase in town, we have increase in trash disposal and tipping fees, and the same with recycling. He has managed to get the contamination rate of recycling to under 10%, which allows us to have fewer audits and fewer rate increases in between. Let's see what else is in his big accomplishments for the year. The 109 road improvements and the upgrades to Clapboard Tree and Winter Street, as well as the Oak Pond and Oak and Pond Street intersections. His projects going forward are continued street improvements and sidewalk safety. I think one of the warrant articles is a $900,000 request for a study of the Canton Street sidewalks. But overall, like I said, I mean, we can see what he does and how well his group does in town by the condition of the buildings, the parks, and the open areas. I think he's done a great job from our perspective. Any questions?
Then I think general government, Jim, I believe. Hold on. There we go.
Right, back to me. The general government is basically how the town's run: the select board, finance, assessors, treasurers, IT, human resources, conservation commission. Although it's there on a daily basis, it's just winding down from its COVID So not a lot was new or different to add to the town this year. Its major improvements were restructuring the town hall to make it more efficient and more handicap accessible. We've heard in the past that the town hall is outdated and we'll probably be looking to restructure it or rebuild one in the future, but they're certainly managing to extend its life. In addition to that, they've moved to more online access to minimize people's need for running around and hopefully access everything from their home. The budget's increased a little bit, again, more so due to the increase in need for personnel and additional services provided in the town. And just to piggyback on what Chris had to say, the big accomplishment was the opening of Wentworth Hall. That was a long time in the making, but it's fully functional and up and running. And Westwood has been recognized by the National Government Finance Office Association for financial excellence. This is the town's 24th consecutive national award. The one thing I did find in the budget that raised my attention is there is a $405,000 budget item for the Finance Committee's reserve fund. And that's more of a, as we need it, you know, it's available funds. So we don't have to go back and reappropriate money during the year. However, over the past couple of years, that hasn't been used. And what happens is it's returned annually into free cash. And then in the subsequent fiscal years, we rebudget it. So over and over, we're budgeting money and then turning it into free cash, and the taxes go up from there. So I asked Pam if the free cash could refund that line item, and she said it could, however, not for this year. So that would raise the question next year if somebody wants to, you know, address that issue and in essence save the town $500,000 from new budget items. However, Pam is not going to be around next year, so I don't know who's going to bring that to the attention. Other than that, the town's running efficiently and smoothly.
Thanks, Jim. Now we're gonna just move on to, hold on, we can move on here. Here we go. So now as we kind of close out a little bit of our presentation, I'm just gonna quickly go over the fixed costs that we have in our town. And all these fixed costs are, there are several shared fixed costs that are in the budget, and these provide benefits and services to both, you know, the town and school operations and also their employees. So as you can see here, the FY22 fixed cost budget, it was at 18.3 million, and then there's an expected increase for FY23 to 19.6 million. So that puts us at about a 6.8% increase. And so breaking it out at high level, the school retirement, there's a change of about 130,000, which that gives us about 7.2%. And then for the municipal retirement, it's about a change about like 313K. That's an increase about 7.3%. And then for the health insurance for the school, it's about 360,000. So that's a 7% increase. And then the health insurance for the municipal employees, we have about 118,000, 119,000, again, 7% increase. And then there is also to the waste collection disposal, which that's increasing to 2.2%. And so the difference is about 37,000 compared from FY22 to FY23. And so as you can see though too, on just the breakout of those graphs right there, is that the fixed cost consists of, you know, the municipal, which is about 44%, and then the school, which equals to about 56%. So the left pie is just the percentage, and then it gives a breakout of in actual value. So, and then as we just, Chris, do you have a question on?
Yeah, do those figures include the OPEB, the other post-employment benefit, which is not mandatory, but by our fiscal policy, we've always put a chunk of money into that trust fund. And I was wondering if that 19.6 million included the OPEB amount for this year.
I don't believe it does. I'm looking at the numbers right here and I don't see anything here, but if there is someone that actually 100% can confirm that, please do. But I say no, it's not included in here.
Because that's roughly another $1.4 million.
Right. Right. So from what I can see here, these fixed costs are strictly benefits, health insurance costs, Social Security, Medicare. No, there's nothing of the OPEB. So I think that that's separate.
This is Pam. I can just
Okay.
add to that. Yeah, Jane, just let me in. Thank you. Chris, we don't have the OPEB here because we still are carrying the OPEB as a separate warrant article. So we are funding the OPEB at $1.5 million in that separate warrant article. That is something we've talked about, that perhaps we're at a point where we can roll that into here. When OPEB first started and we first started funding, we kept it as a separate article. But now it's really become like a standard fixed cost. So they're going forward in the budget process, there may be an opportunity just to include that within the other fixed costs that are listed here.
Thanks, Pam.
I see we have other questions. Can we hold questions until Lauren's completed and then we'll open it up to questions? Is that okay? Lauren, it looks like you're almost done.
I have one more slide and I literally am just gonna, it's literally just a very quick summary and just key takeaways, which we've already discussed. Again, it's been mentioned, just, the COVID has subsided. I'm not saying, I think everyone would agree that it's not 100% gone, but also though too, as Alex had mentioned that that the fire department, they administered vaccines. Chris also mentioned this too. And that there's also been an overall improvement because of COVID though, but an overall improvement to the town electronic options, for instance, online payment, remote work, virtual meetings. So in a weird way, COVID kind of forced us to improve in that area, which it's, that's just part of our life now. And then again, I believe, Chris, you mentioned this though too, that most of the COVID costs, they were covered by state and federal funding. And then, but though one key, because of COVID though too, the hotel meals taxes have continued to lag. And again, community improvement with the fire and police, the fire and police department employment, it's stable and it's constant and it will continue. And there's continued community improvement, there's succession planning, and filled anticipated that vacancies within the organizations and departments, and they've reorged internal structure. And then again, though, the continued development of the Islington Village and everything, again, the Wentworth Hall, the new library, and then the expected new restaurants and that revenue that we'll be getting, the town will be gaining from that property and meal tax. And then also too, though, the continued upgrading the high school fields and education outreach regarding recycling within the community. So that's it.
Great, thank you all. This was really helpful. Every single year I learned something new. So I learned new things this year, so thank you. If we want to take down the presentation, we could see each other and then maybe go ahead. Okay, so George Hertz, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, first of all, my excellent presentations all around to Lauren and the folks who worked on her subcommittee. I just want to confirm one thing. I believe in in budget item 4, the capital appropriation of 1.356 million, and if Pam's on that, that does include $80,000 for the public safety communication system upgrades. Pam, is that correct?
Yes, we have funding in for a new radio system and upgrade.
Okay,
Yes,
I just want to,
yes.
Yeah, so the issue that Angela brought up is going to be addressed in budget item number 4.
Yeah.
Okay, That's it. Otherwise, excellent presentations all around, guys. Thank you.
Other questions and comments from FinCom members? Bill?
Just one quick question. First of all, great job, everyone. It's a tough act to follow in a few minutes, I'll say that. But just a question I saw on the School Street playground and the $60,000, just to kind of keep it up to speed. There was mentioning of it needing to be replaced at some point. What's the timeline on that and the estimated cost of that? I was curious.
So there was no specific conversation around, when it will need to be replaced. Just, it was noted that the equipment is very old and that, consistently fixing things, there'll be items that will need to be completely replaced. And so now, the budget request is just, to fix the things that really need to be fixed to keep the playground safe. But, there was no in-depth conversation in terms of, when the facilities on the playground will need to be fixed. And I don't know if that's something maybe Pam would know, or if it's, a takeaway, we could take that away and get some answers for you.
It looks like Chris might have an answer to that. Chris?
Thank
Chris
you.
Baldwin.
So Angela, thank you very much. And just to add on to what Angela was saying, the $60,000 does include improvements in some of the elements in the School Street playground, as well as a pour in place surface for handicapped accessibility. The recreation director has also reached out to some vendors and work in meeting with the commission, members of the Commission on Disabilities, to identify additional elements for handicapped accessibility, which is not part of this request. But so there are, he does have a plan to improve some of the elements as well as the accessibility. So the accessibility is going to be addressed, could be addressed with the 60,000 along with some of the existing elements. And then he has a proposal that we're working on funding for some additional handicapped accessible elements within the playground.
Thanks, Chris.
Diane, excuse me, Bill. Diane, I promoted Rich Adams. I think he had wanted to make a comment. I don't know if he's ready to do that or still wants to make one.
Yeah, so Chris pretty much just answered the question. Elements will be replaced as inspections indicate, and that's what this budget request is for, to replace the items that need to be replaced now. And everything else in the last inspection was deemed safe, and with the exception of a few items which have since been fixed, smaller items. So we have the playgrounds inspected annually, and any work that needs to be done, if it's small, will be handled right away. If it's larger, we'll need to talk in this setting.
Thank you. Tom?
Thanks, Diane. Quick question for Angela, and great job, everybody. And Angela, for the police department, have they added any fully electric cars, or do they have any plans to do so?
I believe there's one on order.
One
So, yeah, and so we're still waiting, to receive that. I think it's just on order right now. But yeah, we're expecting one full hybrid vehicle.
Well, hybrid is both.
I'm sorry, fully electric. I apologize.
Gotcha. Cool. Great. Thank you. Great job, by the way.
Thought I saw another hand, but no, I don't see it.
George Lehan had his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to comment on Rich Adams' comment. I from being involved with actually installing a playground in the town for the tot lot near the senior center, that is a very difficult thing to assess the equipment. And I think Rich has done a great job at it over the year. And it's not easy because, I mean, at any point in time, you can need to replace it, or there's always an improvement to be made, but it is a very costly thing. And I think he's done an excellent job balancing that.
Thank you, George.
Thanks. All right, I don't see any other hands. So Jane, am I correct that we opened it up to public and press? If anybody has a comment, could type it in the, any questions? I don't know who we have, Jane. I can't tell who's here other than us. Do we have folks?
We have, there's a couple of times people have come in and out, but I don't see anybody right now, and there's no questions in the chat.
Okay, all right. Super, let's move on. We want to thank you guys. You did a fabulous job. And as I said, I love learning new things every year. So thank you very much. You all, like, you target in on some things that we've never talked about before in prior years. And so it's always fascinating. So great job. Thank you. And now, Bill, you are up following that act.
Tough to follow. Let me see if I can share. All right. Can you see everything okay?
Yes, we can see everything though.
Okay.
Yeah, your invitation, so we can see all the slides, including the next slide. And
Oh, there's a way to fix
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
There we go. Is
Awesome.
that better?
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's perfect.
So I'm Bill Bruce. I am chair of the Education Committee. I have a few folks with me tonight. Mike Gay, Renee, and George. Mike and I are going to do most of the talking. I think George is going to do color commentary at points. But I'll just kick things off. I'll kind of talk a little bit about the process because I think this is important for folks to understand about how the kind of school budget process works. So it's the same process every year where there's department submissions, then it works up through Emily and team, and then it goes in front of the school committee. So the school committee, holds its hearings. In the case of this year's budget, there was unanimous acceptance of the proposed budget. It's then presented to the Finance and Warrant Commission. Emily presented to us, what might have been a month ago now. And then a few weeks after that, her and her team met with all of us on the education subcommittee to talk through our questions and help us kind of prepare for this. So tonight is our kind of presentation of that approved budget by the school committee. So really the budget overall is kind of designed to really meet our contractual obligations. And you'll see as we get into the numbers, a huge portion of the budget is contractual obligations on salaries. Always look to address new needs, but we also have a multi-year plan where they try to continue to execute on our priorities on a year-to-year basis, working within the budget. And as in prior years, sometimes things are deferred to future years. So just I'll highlight through the operating budget, then Mike's going to jump in on special ed, and then we'll kind of close it out. I'll hit on the capital budget at the end. So from an operating budget perspective, everyone saw this a few weeks ago, we're going to explain in detail in a little bit what the IDEA grant is, because that's definitely makes things look a little more confusing this year, but it's really a way we're kind of rebucketing money. But you can see here, $1.749 million increase from the 22 budget to the 23, again, primarily being driven by salaries. I just flip to the next slide, just talk through the detail a little bit. So the salaries, as I said, are the largest portion of the budget, 85% of it. And those contractual obligations are the main driver. The increase in budgeted salaries this year is 3.7%. The new positions account for about $450K, and we'll talk through those in a little bit. And the IDEA grant, what we're doing, what you saw on the prior slide is we're using $800K of that IDEA grant to pay for salary rather than non-salary expense. And this was really a strategic decision in order to enable us to hopefully potentially get an increase in Medicaid reimbursement.
Bill?
Yep.
I'm sorry, just to chime in on one thing. The actual increase that the school department is requesting is only 3.5%, while the budgeted salaries, as Bill said, is 3.7, with the new positions, as you said, making up 450. that 450 makes up less than 1% of that increase. So it's not 3.7, it's 3.5 overall, with salaries being 3.7.
Thanks, George. And the next page here kind of lays out, what the salaries look like, and I'll talk about the positions on the next few slides, but that kind of net increase in salaries for existing personnel, a little over 300K. Then there's some proposed new positions from a faculty standpoint, about 3.8 FTE, which totals 215K. And then there's new positions from a support perspective as well. It's about 7.5 FTEs, totaling about 233K. A small increase in non-salary accounts of almost 70,000. And then that kind of net increase due to non-salary changes is 900,000. So that's what gets the 1.7 million. George spoke to the 3.5%. 1.7 is the 3.5% number, and this FTE change is a little over 11. And so from an FTE standpoint, we broke it out into faculty professional additions. You can see here a lot of the positions being added are certainly to address the changing environment of teaching, given what's happened in COVID, and especially to help the students, given the pandemic coming out of it from a supports perspective. So you'll see adjustment counselors in the elementary school, which has no operating impact. A high school adjustment counselor being added, dean of students at the middle school. And I know Emily talked a bit about this before, but a necessary position to kind of help manage the overall day-to-day and enable the principal to do more of what he's supposed to do within his role in running the school. Social studies teacher at the high school, partial FTE, and then increase in the FTE around director of safety and security. So these are the positions that kind of add up to that 3.8 FTE that's part of faculty and professional. And then what done on the next slide is laid out the support staff positions. So you'll see there's 2 ABA tutors being added, some additional SPED instructor assistants, 2 of them, special education substitute going into Downey as well, half FTE transition coach for the high school, some administrative assistants, half FTEs each for facilities in the business office. Now the business office one doesn't have the operating impact. We also adding an FTE, a METCO advisor for the elementary as we look to expand METCO down below the middle school. And again, there's no impact there. That's offset by the METCO funds. And then just some other small salary adjustments there. So these are the 7.5 positions from a support perspective that added up on the prior couple slides to 233K. Thought it was important because this is always a question just to highlight enrollment details. Overall enrollment's been stable. Our max kind of enrollment number was still back in the 11-12 year of about 3,100. Our current enrollment's around 2,800 across all schools, expected to rise a bit going into next year to almost 2,900. The distribution across the grade levels continues to shift. Elementary schools continue to rise, especially at the lower grade levels. We expect to continue to see that up through the 25-26 year. Today we have about 1,250 enrolled across the elementary school, and we may see upwards of 1,450 or so as we get near 25-26. The middle and high school continues to decrease a bit overall compared. Today about 1,700, expected to decrease to around 1,500 by that 25-26 year. So nothing drastically changing from last year in terms of where the overall projected enrollment numbers are. But you can definitely see the increases at the lower levels as more folks move into town for our schools. Then with that, I'll hand it over to Mike to talk through special ed, and then we'll finish up with operating and answer questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bill. So I'm going to dive into kind of the high level numbers, and then I'm going to address the IDEA grant and why that was important this year for the overall budget, and kind of setting us up for the future in the best possible way. So at a high level, the team did a very good job last year of forecasting the spend associated with special education. Special education includes, lots of services that we apply for our students to remain in Westwood. And so that is always going to be our primary objective from the school department, to have the services that our children need most desperately. There are instances where the needs of children within the town of Westwood extend beyond what we're capable of providing. And the overview of this next couple of charts kind of break down the cost. The planning of that is one aspect. So the teams come together, they look at the current enrollment, the residential outside of Westwood, the day tuitions where students are going back and forth, collaborative tuitions, and then all of the travel associated with the transportation associated with supporting those offerings. The planning around that is one aspect, but during the course of the year, things can change. Needs can change. Students can move into town, and again, the town has an obligation to provide the right services. Again, hopefully within our school system, and some cases outside. So fiscal year 22, we saw a small increase in tuition from 1.446 million and change to 1.473 million, a $27,000 increase in the overall tuitions. And that's what the school department is requesting. They saw an offsetting decrease in the total transportation of $40,000. So out of district special education transportation, dropped over 25, right around $25,000. And then in district special education transportation dropped $15,000. The net of this is effectively a non-salary reduction of $13,000. That is, again, showing a really low number increase when you look at the overall spend in special education. There was the $79,000 increase for the resources that are going to be added in the salary section that Bill just went over. So there is a slight net increase when you look at overall salaries and the overall cost. Now the tricky part. If you can go to the next slide. Introducing the IDEA grant, which I did not know anything about, which I should have before diving into the subcommittee. The IDEA grant is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And I'm not going to read this specifically, but it's a law that basically, makes it a requirement for our school systems to provide the best of abilities or best of education for children with disabilities across the nation. The IDEA grant governs how states and public agencies provide early intervention, special education, and related services to more than 7.5 million eligible infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. So as I mentioned earlier, this includes the offerings that we provide to our students within the Westwood Public Schools, and when we have to go outside of Westwood to look at either a residential or a day offering for our students. Flick to the next slide. I just want to say that the IDEA grant isn't new. So the IDEA grant has been something that Westwood has always been, applying to our budget. We have just been applying the dollars in a little bit of a different manner than we're choosing to do this year. So in past years, we have applied most of that money to salaries. Salaries, make sense because we were applying the special education salaries. We had this money that was coming in from the IDEA grant, and we moved all of that into salaries. However, the next piece is Medicaid. Medicaid reimbursement is something that our town strives to maximize. We constantly, and this is, kind of under Emily Lemma and her team, are constantly looking for the most advantageous reimbursement for Medicaid expenses. The catch is salaries for special education are not reimbursable for Medicaid. Because of that, having us apply the IDEA grant money to salaries, excuse me, I take it back. I think I messed up this delivery. Having us apply the IDEA grant, I'm totally off. Having us apply the IDEA grant money to non-salary expenses like the tuition, like the travel, the transportation for in town as opposed to out of town. That's putting us at a disadvantage because a large portion of our expenses for IDEA grant are those salaries. So this year, you can go to the next one, we have decided to apply the IDEA grant money to salaries. So all of the money will go to salaries. This is a net zero impact. The same IDEA grant money is coming in. It's being applied to our budget, just in a different bucket. And the result is some funky numbers when we look at the year-over-year compares. So the total salaries, when we look at the total budget, it looks like that's a very, very small increase. Excuse me, or it's a larger increase of 1.630 million. However, with the IDEA grant, and again, applying all of that $800,000 to the salaries, the number is $785,000. So again, it shows up as a smaller fractional increase, but the net increase in salaries is the 1.63 million. Special education, again, this is the non-salary components. $13,000 is the incremental change. Again, I covered how that came up. It was effectively a $40,000 reduction in travel expenses and a $27,000 increase in those tuitions. That is actually showing up in the budget as an $831,000 incremental change. So again, we're increasing the money that is being applied to the non-salary element so that Lemma and her team can maximize Medicaid reimbursements. The question I had asked to Lemma and to Emily and the team when we met with them is, can you give us some sort of a tangible number to what we're going to benefit with Medicaid? And the answer is no. They can't, because there's no guarantees when you submit claims for Medicaid. But one guarantee is if you ever submit a claim that is a salary, there's a 0% chance of that getting reimbursed because it's not part of the program. So again, I just wanted to go over this because it's a really important element and one that I was thoroughly confused on. And I think I confused everybody at the beginning of this presentation. So I think that's it. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to cover this. Before we get to capital budget, actually, the services that we're providing, I believe are absolutely at the highest level of what the state offers. So again, I didn't get into kind of the report card on this, but I'm proud that my children went through Downey, and that Downey was a big part of the special education program, as many of the FinCom members' children are. I've got many friends that have children that are still in the school system that are part of these programs, both in town and out of town services. So I think this is one of the crown jewels in the overall budget and the offerings that the school offers to our children. So thanks so much. Back to you, Bill.
All right. So just the last piece, which shouldn't take too long, is capital budget, because there's not a lot changing here from the last few years. It's been pretty consistent since fiscal year 20 overall. Proposed budget's fairly in line. A couple things moving around where the money is going, a little more for repair and maintenance and roofing, a little less for FF&E. And then this year, we didn't have any vehicle expenses. But, we asked the question, so I'll reinforce that we still have to, despite the upcoming new building in a few years, we still have to maintain the existing ones. And the school works with the limited budget they have to bounce around and get things done. And certainly make sure that the schools are safe. As time goes on here, once we get into the new buildings, certainly there'll be a different maintenance cost there, but there's still needs at the other schools. So I wouldn't anticipate these budgeted numbers going down from that standpoint, given we still have plenty of work at the other schools. But just wanted to set that expectation since we as a group kind of asked those questions when we were meeting with Emily and team. So with that, before I hand it over for questions, George, is there anything we missed you want to correct us on or
not correcting, augmenting. As we talked, as it was clearly mentioned, the 3.5% increase, 1.749 million of it is the total. Salaries are making up the 1.6 million of it. And after you back out the new salaries or the new positions, you're at about 1.18. And historically, about 77% of the increase, the 3.5 increase, is pretty much already predetermined by contractual agreements. So there's not a lot of wiggle room that Emily and her team have. And, with the increases of, give or take 1.1, I think they did a very good job managing a budget of essentially 2.3% was already fixed. So they really only had about 1.2% to play with. But a key part here is union negotiations are actually actively going on right now. So that is an estimate of where we're going to end up after the negotiations based on what Emily had presented to us. She believes it's pretty close, but they are actively going on now. And, in my opinion, this is, not an opinion of the FinCom or the committee, but in my opinion, anything can happen during a union negotiation. I'm not speaking for Emily. I'm not speaking for the subcommittee, but that's something that needs to be kept in mind. I'm sure we'll get the results of it whenever it potentially will be over. But, we should be cognizant of that for the future. And the IDEA grant, Michael did a great job on it, but it's just a great example of being smarter with our money, or, being smart, not working hard, but working smart with the money, reallocating it and getting our most bang for the buck for our, the tax dollars that are spread. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I'll second one other thing. This is my first experience of being on a subcommittee, and the access to Emily, her team, Lemma, John, everybody that I interacted with, and a number of questions back and forth was amazing. So I appreciate all of the focus that went into making the first round of the budget, and then putting up with all of our questions throughout the process.
Diane, you're muted.
Okay, so it looks like we have a question from Chris.
Yeah, not much of a question, more of a comment. As we went through this, and this goes back to even the municipal ones, it dawned on me that anything in that budget that relies on something that's petroleum-based may well experience an increase in costs. So apart from our typical running under budget and having a lot of free cash available, we may be sitting here next year looking to use a lot of that free cash to fund overages because of the energy increases. So I just keep that in mind.
Good point. I don't see any questions for the school subcommittee.
I have
go ahead.
A question or a comment, actually. I was surprised that you didn't refer to the proposed METCO expansion of from 51 students to about 87. I thought that was a somewhat significant issue. In fact, I'm in the budget, it's referred to only as accepting a grant that will cover only ancillary expenses for long distance busing and special Metco counselors. But I did think this was a significant issue that should be, I think the merits of the Metco expansion proposal should be discussed openly and presented to the taxpayers. I would have preferred that that it come with a recommendation from the select board and be a separate article. But if the taxpayers want to expand the Metco program, that will be charitable and generous. And there are good arguments for doing that, but I would prefer
You have
that
a
it be
question, Peter?
discussed openly. Yes, did you obtain any additional information about the cost of the Metco program? And I have some numbers about that might be interesting, but it's the suggestion that the marginal cost is zero is very misleading.
Okay, well, why don't we let them answer the question?
Bill, do you mind if I jump in?
Go ahead.
Oh, so the cost of the Metco program is obviously, it is not borne by the taxpayers of Westwood. It is borne by a state program. So the actual cost for the students to come in is zero. What you may be thinking is misleading is the fact of the additional stress on the infrastructure. We were assured when this was brought up, and we did ask about it, we were assured that the schools that would be, I guess, hosting the elementary school Metco program would be schools where the classroom size was like 14 or 15, which zeroes in on the Hanlon and the Deerfield schools. So not only is the financial burden really immaterial, which is ultimately what the FinCom is supposed to be reviewing as financial decisions, the infrastructure is more balancing it out. The merits of the program is, you're bringing, different cultures and different people together, which is a good thing. I mean, I was in the high school when Metco was there, and I thought it was a good thing, and I still am an advocate of it. And I don't really see a negative to the Metco program, especially when it's taking into account that not one of the town of Westwood's tax dollars would be going to supporting it.
Any other questions from FinCom?
Well, I disagree with that assessment. That's
Okay.
the overwhelming portion of the operating expenses for the schools are for personnel, over 85%, particularly for teachers. And Westwood has a favorable and expensive student to teacher ratio of about 12:1. If you want to maintain that standard, then you must add another teacher for every additional 12 students or thereabouts. And administrative personnel go up in proportion to teachers and often disproportionately. This means the operating costs in Westwood of about $20,000 per student are roughly linear with the number of students.
Superintendent Parks, would you like to address the concern about the financing?
Actually, before she does that, Jane, can you let Bill back in? He got booted.
Hi, yes, I would, thank you. Yeah, I don't think that it's accurate to say that with every 12 students, we then add a staff member. That simply isn't how we budget and how we allocate staff in the district. And so, as George said, the Metco program is funded by the state legislature. It is a grant-funded program. The grants are allocated to local districts, and it is considered a marginal seed program. The idea is that we are able to strategically bring in students, and we can place them in classrooms where we have seats. So as George said, if I have a classroom where I have, say, 14 or 15 students, we would say, well, we have seats available in that classroom, and we're able to place the student there without increasing our need for additional staff. And we're able to do this each year. We're able to look at our class sizes, we're able to look at our enrollments, and we're able to bring in students and put them at the grade levels in schools where we have room. And so that's why it's considered a marginal seat program. The substantial costs are transportation, that's covered by the grant, staff that's dedicated specifically for Metco, that's also paid for by the grant. And I do just want to take this opportunity to say that, I think it is important whenever we're talking about expanding a program to talk about potential costs. I think it's equally important to talk about value. And we have had extensive conversation in the school department for many years at school committee about what the value of the Metco program is to Westwood. And I think it is important to reframe that the purpose of the Metco program, which is a voluntary desegregation program stemming back to the 1960s, born out of the civil rights movement, the purpose was not to, and remains, not to have Westwood sort of do something nice or charitable for others. This has to do with the kind of community that we want to be, the experience that we want to give to all of our students in Westwood. And, it really reflects our belief that when people learn together and understand, sort of the diversity of people in the world, that they're going to be better prepared for life after high school. And so I think the value is equally important to talk about. And I would just say that the conversation about whether or not to expand Metco and to accept the grant did happen in public at school committee meetings. And the school committee voted to accept that additional grant funding.
Thanks, Emily. Do we have any other questions from FinCom for the school committee, subcommittee? Do we have any questions, Jane, from the public or the press?
No, we do not.
No, we do not. Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you both. Excellent, excellent subcommittees. Really appreciate all your work. I know it's really hard, and I know you spend a huge amount of time on this. So thank you. This is how our committee is successful. So thanks. Okay, Jane, what do we have next?
We are going to have, I just moved Mike Walsh, our our select board chair, in with us, and Pam is with us. Chris needed to step away to another meeting. And this would be the final changes. I think Mike is going to, or maybe Pam and Mike will speak to from last night's meeting. They'll give us that brief update, and then any final questions from our FinCom members for Select Board Article 2 and Select Board Article 4, and then we would open it up to the public and press for questions.
Okay, welcome. Who do we have here? Mr. Walsh, welcome.
Good evening, welcome everyone. Sitting through your thorough presentation was very interesting this evening. Thank you very much for everyone who worked hard at this. We all know that to serve the town is not always a rewarding job, but we find satisfaction in what we do. So thank you to everybody. You did a great job. I have to tell you, so last night we removed most of our articles, but we did add one. And this is what I was talking about last week when I think Chris asked about this, about what we're holding. Chris, we did have one. We are looking to purchase the American Legion building, which is right behind Town Hall. I can tell you this, that the other articles, of course, you've already known about them, the Obed Baker House, a easement on Carby Street, and the third one that we have outside of all the financials is to purchase the American Legion. It is still not nailed down yet, but it is a moving target. Right now, we have an assessment, an appraisal, if you will, that was done 2 years ago. So based on that appraisal, we are waiting for an update, which is expected tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. But based on our negotiations right now, we expect to be able to close that hopefully by the end of the week. As I said, there are still some small details to be worked out. Right now, we have it tentatively agreed, and I use that term tentatively agreed, at $650,000 to do that. That may change a little bit based on the assessment, but as I said, there are still moving pieces, and that's why when we were at your first public meeting, we did not really have all the details yet. We feel that it's pretty much a no-brainer because of where its location is to town hall, to the police station. It's not really a place that's desirable for families to, to move to, so we think we're in a good position. And I think that will be the only thing that was not before you before. So based on that, that's where we are. There are only, outside of the appropriation, there are only 3 articles that the select board is putting forward this year.
So, Mr. Walsh, thank you. Do you think that, so it sounds like you think that this might be final by the end of the week and, maybe we'll get some more information next week on this one?
If it was up to me, it would be final already, but there are moving parts. The biggest problem, and I will say this, so the biggest problem is the American Legion is a nonprofit. And the hardest part about trying to wrap this up is nonprofits and their sale of property must be approved by the Attorney General's office. So that is another piece of the puzzle that we're working on, but we think we can reach an agreement. We have the fair market value. We have an appraisal that is, reasonable. We worked out rental of the property for a period of years, and we worked out minor details, and we'll get to the final details. I'm hoping it can be done as soon as possible.
Okay, so we'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about this at our next meeting. So thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for this. Jim, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, just 2 questions. What is the town's planned use for the property and how is it going to be funded? Is it going to be taxed or borrowed?
Well, so Jim, we all hate this term, and I hate this term the most. It'll be funded by free cash. And that's always a term that gets everybody crazy, but that means that's within our tax rolls to be able to fund it. So we do not have to do any override or things like that. We have a couple of different options from when we sell other property. There is actually an account that when we sell town property, the money goes into that account, but more likely than not, we'd be able to fund it with free cash and not have to borrow any money at all.
All right. What's the town's intent and purpose for the land?
It mostly probably will be used for youth and family services and for activities because it is so close to the Deerfield. But it will be one of those locations that's available, for a larger town meeting for, certain committees and things like that. It will be available. The Legion will continue to use it for 10 years for their meetings, but their meetings are twice a month and a couple of holidays a year. It will still be marked American Legion so that people know where they're going to go. And due respect to our veterans, so it will still be marked the American Legion for a while, and they will be able to store their baseball uniforms and whatever paraphernalia they might have or commemorative things that they want to keep. But other than that, the town will own it. There will be, and honestly, there will be some renovations needed to bring it up to code, to make it, handicapped accessible and things like that. But we think that will be able to be done within our budget over time. So it is, as we like to say, I pretty much think this is a no-brainer because of its location. Kind of adds the entire town hall, police station, Deerfield School all together. We do not want to let it, and we were able to get it before it went to market because we think that there would be, if nothing else, Westwood Glen would be interested in this property. And we don't want that to happen. So that is where we are, and that's the only new article from what has been presented to you so far. And
Right, just to follow up, what are your estimated rehab costs? And isn't family and youth services in the Wentworth building?
it is, but there are activities for the kids, to be able to go over to the Deerfield School and things like that. So there'll be activities that are indoors and things like that until the Deerfield School and the property of the Deerfield School is decided. There'll be other opportunities there as well.
So, and what are the expected rehab costs?
So far, it's probably somewhere, we're guessing, between 100 and 150. But, honestly, Jim, based on construction costs, I couldn't tell you right now, but that's our best estimate at this point in time.
Yeah, it won't go down from there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not going down.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just add on to what Chairman Walsh said.
Please.
We will be using it. The idea is really to, youth and family services certainly could use it, but really recreation and the recreation programs with the dedicated parking that they will have there, we could move some of the recreation programs out of Wentworth Hall to use that for youth and family services, the library, and also other community uses. It could also be used for other community uses. because it would be a meeting, it could be a meeting space once we put the accessibility, primarily the handicapped accessible restrooms in. Also, I did have a brief discussion with our town clerk. That could be an ideal location for early voting as well. So I think there's a number of uses that we've talked about, and I'm sure there are additional uses that others will come up with. We also have a number of community organizations, not town organizations, but community organizations that are looking for meeting spaces, and this is a way that we could also accommodate some of those.
Okay, thanks. Chris, you had your hand up, I think?
Yeah, will the American Legion be paying rent while they use it?
So Chris, what we've done is we've taken right now, the assessed value and reduced it so that it covers the rent, yes. So the answer is yes, whether or not they're not gonna pay us a check every month, but we're working that out as part of the deal.
Right, okay.
George?
I'm sure I'm not the first person to bring this up, Chris and Michael, but is there any chance or any possibility of the building being used for a preschool, which I'm sure you know the demand is pretty high. Last year, there were 13 or 14 spots and 45 applications. So there's definitely a demand or a need for an expanded integrated preschool, but I don't know if I'm sure I'm not the first person to bring it up, so.
Actually, George, I can say I think you are, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, the difference is this, we don't own it yet, so we haven't really explored all the possibilities. But depending on the hours that are required, that's something that can be considered. I mean, listen, we'd love to own it and then rent it. Are you kidding me? That would be great to bring back money to the town, especially during hours that kids are in school and we can't use it. So yes, those are possibilities. And, you know, until we own it, it's tough to really reach out. And up until now, we've kept it quiet because we wanted to make sure that we actually have a deal in hand or pretty close to in hand before we announced it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious how long the leaseback period would be to the American Legion. Is it a number of years or months? And I'm asking, oh, sorry, 10 years? Thanks, Chris. 10 years? Okay. And I'm only asking because obviously with Deerfield Hanlon School, Deerfield will be a vacant property just adjacent. So we'll have quite an amount of space there, indoor and parking and outdoors. So just making sure if we could put that to good use with the Deerfield School.
They're talking about 2 meetings a month. So yes, I mean, so it really will be, you know, except for their meetings, it really will belong to the town and we'll have good use of that. So yes, it is, Alex, a great thing.
And just to elaborate a little bit on that, and obviously for our Memorial Day and Veterans Day observations, we would certainly work with the members of the Legion to have that building open for their members and other veterans as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Coleman. We really appreciate you coming before us tonight and telling us about this. And, you know, members will get more information out to you as soon as possible so that you'll have that to consider for our final meeting.
And we will do everything we can to answer questions and provide any information, but we think pretty much this is, as I said at the last meeting, I think, Chris, to you, this is a no-brainer. We think this is really an important piece of the entire town area, and it really gives us a lot of leeway in the future, let alone after, 10 years, we'll have exclusive use of it. But yes, this is a great deal, I think, for the town. As I like to say, land is the only thing that doesn't multiply.
All righty, we'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Diane, this would be a final opportunity for members. I brought in Patrick Ahern, Town Council, and Nora Lockman, Director of Community and Economic Development. Those 2 select board articles, I think they're sort of the experts on those. If members have any questions on select board 2 and 4, before we move on to planning board final look.
Jane, my computer's about to die. I'm gonna run, get a cord, and then I'll be right back. So if Vice Chair, I don't see him. Where are you? There you are, George Hertz. If you would chair for about 2 minutes.
Jane, could I just do a quick?
Please, thank you, Pam.
I just want to do a super quick budget update. First, we do want to thank you for the time all of you put into your subcommittee and all of your meetings. I was able to sit in on all the municipal subcommittee meetings, and it was so clear that every one of you had read through the budget documents and prepared and came to the meeting with lots of questions, and gave the departments great opportunity to talk about the departments and everything's going on. And you can see that they love to do that. They love to talk about the excitement they have for their programs. And clearly from sitting and hearing the school subcommittee, you did the same on the school side. So we definitely appreciate that. And I do want to just follow up. I know Jim raised the question of perhaps funding differently that FinCom reserve account with the free cash. And you know, we do have a policy to not fund the operating budget with free cash, but that account does work differently. So that is something we may be able to look at in the next year's budget. And I just want Jim to know, I'm going to put a big note. I'll put a big note in the file so that whoever comes in will look at that. But that is kind of a reasonable thought because it is a different account in the way it's been used. I think it's just too late for us to do that this year, but certainly next year at the start of the budget is something that someone could factor in. So I just wanted you to know that. But then I just have a couple of quick budget updates. If I could share my screen, and I'll just do this super quickly. Are you able to see that?
Yes, Pam.
Okay, thank you. So just the select board, their meeting last night did make a couple of adjustments. And so I just wanted you to see these, and then we'll factor these into what you see at the final public hearing at the end of the month. But every year we do have some outside assessments in our budget. And we include preliminary estimates of those numbers early in the budget, and then we update those when we get our final numbers. So we do just have a couple of minor adjustments. One is the Blue Hills Regional School Assessment. We did receive the updated number for that for FY23. That budget will be $131,000. That's about $1,700 or 1.4% over the current year. And that assessment of 131 is about $4,700 less than what we had in the original budget. Another item is the sewer department, the MWRA assessment, which is quite a large number in that sewer budget. The update we've received is that that assessment for FY23 will be $3.3 million. That's about a $33,000 or 1% increase over the current year's assessment. But that assessment is about $42,000 lower than what we had in the original sewer budget that you were reviewing. So we will be adjusting that budget down, and on the sewer revenue budget will get adjusted down also. And then just a couple of other items within our budget. We always do an update of the health insurance budget at this time. We received our final rates for FY23 from the GIC, or the Group Insurance Commission. That's, we purchase our health insurance through the state program. The first week in March, we got the new rates for FY23. The average rate increase is about 6.2%, but there is a range. The active employee plans range in increases from 3 to 10.3% increase. The plan most of our employees are on, our most subscribed plan, is a 6.8% increase. And our retiree plans are in the 1 to 3.9% increase. So when we get those new rates, our HR director and our HR department right away go in and run those numbers on what plans the employees are on and all of that. And when we did that, there's no budget adjustment that we can do for the FY23 budget. I think early in the year we had talked about, we thought we might be able to bring that health insurance budget down, but we cannot. The budget is where it needs to be to cover these rates. And then finally, the debt budget. As was mentioned earlier, we did last week issue some new debt for the town. And I know Jane did send out to you kind of a summary report on that we did. We sold debt last week. Before the sale, we had our credit rating updated. We reaffirmed our AAA rating with S&P. Great reflection for a small town, great reflection of all of our staff, elected officials, our volunteers on our appointed boards. Really a great rate. Treasurer Gavin went out and sold a long-term bond for $7.1 million. We received a 2.2% interest rate, net interest rate for that bond. It included the funding for the road improvement bond that was approved a couple of years ago, that program at town meeting, and all the work that's been done recently in town. It also included the first two pieces of the Hayland School, the Hayland Deerfield New School, the feasibility portion and the design portion, those two pieces that were voted earlier in the process. We were able to issue the long-term debt for those, net of MSBA reimbursement. As you know, now the MSBA pays their share on a monthly basis. So we were able to issue the resulting net amounts for those two pieces. So all of that was in the bond, issued at 2.2%. We want to go in and update the debt budget to reflect the actual amounts of those bonds. So we will be going in, the general fund debt will have a small increase of about $45,000. The exempt debt portion for the schools has an increase of $124,000. The net increase, when we factor in some premium, $107,000. So you'll see that change going into the debt budget. And I want to point out the total exempt debt for 23 will be just over $1.05 million, and that's just about the same level we are in the current year, $1.04 billion. So even though we're bringing in the first two portions of the school, it's staying essentially in line with what the current exempt debt is now. So again, we're going to go in and update the Appendix D budget for all of these different changes. And then finally, the select board last night finalized the adjustments needed for our current year budget, what we call Article 1 and 2, to kind of clean up and supplement our current year's budget. So first in Article 1, some transfers. It did end up being, kind of a rather bad winter for us. We are supplementing the snow and ice budget in total, $240,000. We are doing $140,000 of that here in Article 1, and we would use the FinCom reserve account to make that transfer. And then we have two small items, $35,000 for the town clerk salary account. That's to accommodate some staffing changes that we had to make within the current year. And that's a change you saw carry forward into the FY23 budget. And then $15,000 for fire emergency, some updates to our emergency management response plans, something that the fire chief needs to move forward on. So those two items we will fund. We actually have a little bit of extra money in the current year debt budget, $50,000. So that would be transferred to cover those two items. And then FY22, additional items that we adjust by appropriation. So first, here's the other $100,000 of the snow and ice budget. We also need to supplement the DPW snow and ice salary budget by $120,000. A portion of that is for that one weekend blizzard that we had. That was a multi-day event. We're just at the beginning of that being declared an emergency, and we'll make it eligible for some FEMA funding, federal funding. So we do need to appropriate the funds now to cover it, but you'll probably most likely see that we would be getting some reimbursement back to the community once that process goes in place. Another item that we need to adjust this year is our fire department salary. We need to supplement that budget by about $215,000. Really, that's the impact of the Norwood Hospital closure. So I know you've heard from the chief in the past about the changes with the hospital closing that's made to his operations and his department, particularly in the ambulance operation. So we will supplement that by $215,000. We will use $100,000 of ambulance money to fund that and $100,000 of free cash. And then finally, we do an annual supplement to our ambulance services account this year. That would be $92,000. Basically, we fund the ambulance expense items in the fire department at a base amount, and then at the end of the year we come in and fund that for what the actual activity is. So that $92,000 will include $76,000 for fire department ambulance expenses and $16,000 for the collectors department, which is where we pay for our ambulance billing and collection service. And that $92,000 will also be funded from ambulance revenue. And again, that's an annual item that we have. So those are the budget adjustments that you'll see, and the Articles 1 and 2. We just wanted you to see those to be able to answer any questions on those, but those will be part of the articles when we come back in at the end of the month to the final hearing. We'll go through those at that time.
Okay, so thank you, Pam. So again, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that at our next meeting. All right, so no more questions for the select board. And so I think we'll move on, Jane. We're moving on to hearing any final changes and final comments on the planning board articles. Is that correct?
Yes, there's nobody in the Q&A from public and press for the select board articles. And if members have no final questions on select board articles 2 and 4, then I moved Nora in. So she is present. I did not see Chris Bath, Nora.
Looks like Nora may be talking to someone else. Is anyone from the planning board ready to discuss planning board articles? No? What do we have next, next, James? Is there anything else we can do while we're waiting for Nora? Or no, doesn't look like it.
So we,
No.
no, there's no public and press. We can.
Well, let's take a quick break. People can go grab themselves a seltzer or something if you like, and we'll keep our eye on Nora. And when she's ready, we'll jump back in. Oh, she may be ready.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you,
Good night,
Chairman
Mike.
Walsh.
Thank you. Pat
Nora-
Ahern is going to stay with us. Nora, whenever you're ready. I don't see Chris Pfaff here.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
I talked to Nora late today. I know that she's got an appearance in front of the Personnel Committee tonight on some staffing issues that she's dealing with. So I'm sure she'll be with us shortly. It
Is
looks
there
like
any-
she's with us now. There you go.
Yes, so I'm at,
No, we can't hear you.
You froze, Nora.
you needed answered.
If she is.
Hi, I'm sorry, I another meeting at the same time. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it seems like there's something else going on in the background and you kind of come in and out. There, are you there now?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, sorry about
Okay.
that.
No, I think this should be really quick, right? It's just any updates on the planning board warrant articles.
So there was one update. The planning board amended the solar article. There was a question at the last, at the first FinCom hearing regarding the limit.
You're gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so the planning board they discussed the question of what would constitute a large scale solar application. And they changed their 10,000 square foot threshold to a 5,000 square foot threshold. Completely, as Mr. Pareda has suggested, and determined that that just was not feasible, that they would not be able to find another way of assessing which applications would be appropriate for large scale and which would not. So they set it at 1,000 square feet, which is larger than most homes in town. And they thought that if you had an accessory use on your property that was a solar facility, if it was as large as or larger than your home, it would be appropriate to consider it a large scale that would require planning board consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for Nora around that issue from the FinCom?
Yeah, Diane, I just want to thank Nora and the planning board for doing such terrific work on that issue and taking my comments seriously. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there aren't any other changes to any of the planning board articles. We are not going to consider the first planning board article tonight. There'll be plenty of time at our next meeting to talk more about that. We expect to have some more information before our next meeting. So Nora, is that it? Mr. Ahern, do you have anything else for us on this matter? Do we have any other questions? Go ahead.
I have no changes to report out other than the one that's been reported out for the planning board.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
No
All right,
comment.
thank you.
Ask Diane.
Okay. All right. Jane.
Yes, so what we're gonna do now is, if it makes sense for you, Diane, we would entertain the minutes from our last meeting to have conversation and vote on those. And then after we did that, we would move to close the public portion of this meeting. And after that, we would do the voting of the 7 articles that we were sent out to the members this morning.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
George Hertz,
Mr. Gray seconded. Any comments on the minutes?
Yes, a comment if I may. Once again, the clickable links are not clickable. I think that's something that should be fixed. All right, thank you.
All right, can we get a vote on the minutes?
Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
No.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Diane, if it makes sense to you, we could get a motion to close the public portion of the meeting. And we could do a roll call vote on that. If you're
Okay,
ready,
can I have such a motion?
I'll make the motion.
George.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Are we ready to vote?
Yeah, please. Any comments on that? No? Okay, go ahead, Jane.
Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
No.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Madam Chairman, may I ask for a point of clarification?
Please.
So you've closed the public hearing. That doesn't mean the public has to leave. It just means they can't participate. They're still free to watch the proceedings. Is that not correct?
Yes, thank you.
That is correct. And this wasn't a public hearing, just for clarification. This is a public meeting tonight.
Okay, so we do have a few, how many, Jane?
There's 7 articles.
7 articles. We had two from the select board, and we have 5 from the planning board that we have heard about now several times. We've had a chance to ask questions. We've given public notice on several occasions that we were going to move to deliberate and vote on some of these this evening. We are not going to consider this evening anything where we believe that there may still be open questions or there may still be open information that the commission would receive. So for instance, we are not going to vote on the first planning board article because we believe that there will be more information provided to the members that we still don't have. Most notably, I know that a big question here in the commission has been the impact on the schools. And we expect to have a statement from the superintendent of schools, which I think will be important for you all to get before you vote on this. So we're not going to consider that. We are not going to consider the citizen petitions. I understand from the citizen that he has additional information he would like to provide to the commission. We don't have that yet to give to you. We hope to have that before our final meeting. So we're not going to consider those. So, and we're not going to consider the select board article that you heard about for the very first time tonight. So that leaves us with select board article 2, the open Bacon House, and select board article 4, the disposal of real property at 90 Carby Street. So I'd like to start with those two. And Jane and Tom Kilgare, if you are both going to help me with the process here.
So Tom is going to put up, he's going to share his screen and put up select board article 2. And then Diane, you would open deliberation on select board article 2. And when it gets to the point where members are comfortable, if someone wants to make a motion and second it and you proceed with voting, Tom will then, before we vote, Tom will read the article for the record. So, and then we will proceed with voting, if that makes sense. So here's select board article 2.
Jane, did you promote Chris back into the meeting?
I did, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, we can take that Q&A away. I'll do that.
Thanks. Okay, Tom.
It's up.
Okay, Select Board Article 2, Obed Baker House, disposition of town-owned property. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to take the following actions in conjunction with the disposition of certain parcels of land for purposes of furthering the rehabilitation and reuse of the historic Obed Baker House at 909 High Street. A, to convey the property in question in accordance with applicable procurement laws, those parcels of land shown as lots 42 and 43 in the town of Westwood Assessors plot number 21 or some portion thereof. B, to acquire by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise, and/or to abandon any and all easements, rights, including rights of way, or restrictions as is necessary or convenient to impose appropriate historic preservation restrictions on the exterior of the existing structure and/or to convey or acquire clear title to the above referenced parcels of land on terms acceptable to the select board. And C, to enter all agreements and execute any and all instruments as may be necessary or convenient on behalf of the town to effect the above actions, or to take any other action in relation thereto.
Thank you. So maybe we could get all of us back on the screen. And we will open this up for deliberation.
Diane, would you like members to raise their hands so we don't talk over each other?
I would, but I can't see them all.
Oh, Tommy's taking that down now.
Do I stop share? Is that what I do?
Yes, please. Here you go.
Ah,
Thanks,
there we
Tom.
go.
Great job on that, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so. I don't see any hands, comments, thoughts, deliberation. This is your chance. If there's any questions in your mind about it, if there's anything you want to share with the rest of the committee members, Chris.
Yeah, so I support this, but let's not delude ourselves. Over the course of the last several years, the town has taken a lot of interest in a number of older buildings. And the end result has not been maybe what people have expected. I mean, the Colburn School now, yeah, the exterior looks a little bit like it used to. But we spent $250,000 moving it twice when we could have taken a picture of it. The Obed Baker house, we already moved it once. Okay, fine. So the exterior can remain the way it is, but let's not fool ourselves into thinking that it's going to be the same as it is right now or the same as it was 100 years ago. The Blue Hill, the Blue Heart Tavern got torn down. Wentworth Hall is basically, the new building is called Wentworth Hall, and I'm told that it has a couple of older pieces of wood from the older building buried inside it somewhere, but you'd never know it. So let's not think that this is a preservation action. This is basically an action to make some better use of the property, and I'm all supportive of that.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else with a hand raised or hands. Okay, all right. So then, Jane, I'm assuming we make a motion to, how do we frame the motion?
Yes. Motion to approve Select Board Article 2, Obed Baker House, disposition of town-owned property. So we need a motion and a second, and then we can proceed with voting.
Motion to approve measure to dispose of town of Baker property.
Select Board Article 2. Thank you, Alex and Christina.
Any comments on the motion? Okay, Jane, go ahead.
Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
That's a unanimous approval of Select Board Article 2.
Great. Tom, you want to move us on to Select Board Article 4?
All right, moving right along here. Okay, Select Board Article 4, disposal of real property, 50 Carby Street, grant of easement for driveway. To see if the town would vote to authorize the Select Board to grant up to a 15 feet wide easement across a strip of town-owned land adjacent to the property at 129 Dover Road bordering Carby Street. The town would require the party acquiring the easement to pay for the cost of the required engineering work as well as the value of the easement and any costs associated with establishing that value.
Okay. Comments, questions, thoughts? Christina.
I am supportive. I think what we heard in the last meeting was that it's really a safety issue and it's better for the town and better for the homeowner.
Yeah, I live on Dover Road and I can second that comment. Anything else?
Madam Chair, can I call the question?
Yes.
Call the question.
Make a
I'm sorry.
motion. Make a motion to consider Select Board Article 4, disposal of real property, 50 Carby Street, grant of easement for driveway.
Second.
Okay, any comments? Okay, Jane.
Muted, Jane.
Jane, if you're talking, we don't know it.
I'm so sorry. Just for clarity, Mike Mike Gay made the motion and George Laham seconded. And are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous approval of Select Board Article 4.
Thank you guys so much. Excellent. Let's move on to the planning board.
Chris Pareda, you just sent me an email. You want to ask if town council is with us? If you had a question?
Well, yeah, it doesn't really relate to this article, Pat, but am I right in expecting that the zoning changes that are approved at town meeting don't actually go into effect until the Attorney General approves them?
That's correct. And if you recall, last year, the Attorney General asked for 2 extensions. So we didn't know till almost Thanksgiving if our zoning articles were accepted. So that is correct.
Okay, Diane, that question pertains to our next meeting. But as far as this article is concerned, on the solar array, I'm more than happy with what the planning board did to change the documents.
Let's have us read it and then we'll have our comments, okay? Do you mind?
Nope, no problem.
Thank you, thank you. Tom.
Okay. I'm not muted. Okay. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Whoops. Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Planning Board 2, zoning amendments relative to permitting and approval of solar arrays. To see if the town will vote to approve certain amendments to the zoning bylaw related to the permitting and approval process for solar energy facilities as accessory and principal uses by amending section 2.0 definitions for roof-mounted solar, other solar array, adding definition for large-scale solar, amending section 4.1.2 table of principal uses, amending section 4.3.1 table of accessory uses, and by adding a new section 7.7 solar arrays, or take any other action in relation thereto.
Great. Okay, Chris.
Oh, I would just say that I'm supportive of the article as the planning board has most recently changed. I think 5,000 feet is a better cutoff than 10,000 feet for keeping large solar arrays out of residential districts.
Other comments? Jim.
So what we're voting on is what Nora just orally gave to us as the amendment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jim, I believe the only change was changing 10,000 to 5,000.
That's right. That's right. And you have in your packet, she sent this to us in advance. So you have all of that, the exact, the explanation for why they considered, Chris, your suggestion, why they made the change that they made. All of that is in writing. I know Nora was really, doing double duty tonight, but you do have all of that, in addition to what she told you.
Then I will make a motion that the Finance and Warrant Commission recommend that the town vote to approve Planning Board Article 2.
I'll second it.
Jim?
Okay, any other comments? All right, Jane.
Roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Mike?
Mike?
Sorry about that. Yeah, my computer's telling me right now. Yes, sorry about that.
Thanks, Mike. George?
Yes.
Thank you, George. Angela?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
George L?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
That's a unanimous approval of Planning Board Article 2.
Wow. All right. Planning Board Article 3, Tom.
Okay, Planning Board 3, zoning amendments relative to property on High Street in the vicinity of the historic Obed Baker House and Westwood Plaza. To see if the town will vote to approve certain amendments to the official zoning map in order to facilitate the redevelopment and reuse of the Obed Baker House and redevelopment of the adjacent commercial plaza by changing the zoning designation of the currently undeveloped parcel of land shown on Assessor's Parcel 21 as Lot 43 from Single Residence C, SRC District to Local Business A, LBA District. Changing the zoning designation of the Obed Baker parcel at 909 High Street, shown as Assessor's Parcel 21 as Lot 42 from Single Residence C, SRC to Local Business A, LBA, and by expanding the flexible multiple use overlay District 7, FMUOD 7 High Street Business District to include additional parcels and by making related amendments to the text of section 9.5 of the Westwood zoning bylaw related to the FMUOD 7 overlay district, or take any other action in relation thereto. For initial discussion purposes, the following parcels are proposed to be added to the FMUOD 7 overlay district. However, the number and locations of parcels may change during the course of the public hearing, and any parcel within the LBA district may be considered for inclusion within the proposed expansion of the FMUOD 7 overlay district and to change from single residence C, SRC, to local business A, LBA, the Obed Baker House property at 909 High Street, Assessors Map 21, Lot 42, the undeveloped parcel of land adjacent to the Obed Baker House property, Assessors Map 21, Lot 43, a portion of the town-owned parcel of land providing driveway access to the Obed Baker House property, Assessors Map 20, Lot 72, and expand the FMUOD 7 parcels presently containing the Westwood Plaza known as 911 to 929 and 915 High Street, Assessors Map 21, lots 40 and 41.
Wow. Okay. Comments, thoughts, deliberations? Yes, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, you took it down, but it said the number and designations of the lots may change at the public hearing. What does that mean? Are we not voting on a designated area to be changed? It's fluid.
Shall I put it back up?
If you could, I'll try to.
Yeah, I do
It's
see
probably about
that.
2/3 of the way down.
That's what it says, Jim.
It's line 11, smack dab in the middle of the paragraph.
So do we have a opinion on what that means?
I believe we have Mr. Ahern with us.
I am here. And I believe it means that as they move forward, they may want to, certainly what you're voting on is clearly defined, but they want the ability to relot things moving forward should it become necessary in their process. I believe that's what it is. I think Nora's still on and she can confirm that's what the thought process is.
Nora, are you able to join us briefly?
Yes, sorry, let me just turn off my sound on this other one.
Poor Nora.
I apologize for that. So I believe that language was in there for the advertisement that allowed the planning board to consider the different, any changes that needed to be made to the article in the course of their public hearing. The article language that would actually go to town meeting would not include that language that was in the ad.
So are you telling us that for initial discussion?
The article itself, meeting. Right, so if you stop in relation there to that would be the article. I'm trying to see it on your screen. Sorry, it's a very small screen for me here. Map in order to development and reuse of redevelopment of the adjacent plaza by changing the zoning designation of the currently developed parcel of land shown on Assessor's Parcel 2 as Lot 43 from single residence C district to local business A district, changing the zoning designation of the Obed Baker parcel at 909 High Street, shown as Assessor's Parcel 21 as Lot 42 from single residence C to local business A, and by expanding the flexible multiple use overlay district 7, FMUOD 7 High Street Business District to include additional parcels, and by making related amendments to the text of section 95 of the Westwood zoning bylaw related to FMUOD 7 overlay district, or take any other action in relation thereto. That's the article itself. The text changes that Abby sent in the article, I don't see in this screen here. So this is the description of the article, but it's not the article itself, because there are text changes. I believe they came to you in the map. I'm sorry, in the memo that actually had the article itself. Jane, do you have the memo that Abby sent you?
Nora, these are the final articles that were sent from the select board today. This is the final language that was sent today from select board on all of these articles.
So I believe the select board, at least I haven't seen the others, but I can see in this one, they've sent you the description. Abby sent you a memo that had the article text.
Yeah, Nora, and that memo still contains that sentence.
Yes, it does.
I understand that, but it also contains text changes, I believe.
No,
I'm gonna call-
it reads exactly the same as you see on the screen.
Yes. These are the final articles, Nora, that were sent from Tish. That were.
I understand that was what was sent from Tish,
Yeah.
but I don't believe that is the extent of the article. So I'm calling it up right now. Just give me 1 second. I have to get it onto this other computer.
Well, the article does go on, Nora, to have, it has
It does.
it has a map and everything, but it still contains that offending sentence.
I believe that's what you actually must approve. Right, I believe you can remove that sentence because that sentence is just that was just from the ad. So I believe that what's before you should not have that sentence, but should have the rest of the text changes to the zoning bylaw. So it sounds to me like this is not an article you're ready to vote on.
Yeah, if we don't have the final language, we're clearly not ready to vote on it. So let's
let us get it back and get you the absolute final text that we want.
Yeah, Patrick.
Are we at all worried that we do not have your final text for the other planning board articles? Or was it just this one that was possibly we don't have the final text for?
So I was on another meeting, so I didn't see the articles as you called them up, but I know Abby provided the text of all of the articles, the actual article language in a memo that she sent before she left.
So I think we're going to have to take it on an article by article basis to make sure.
All right, well, let's take this one down. We're clearly not going to vote on this tonight.
Can I ask,
Yeah, George, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask one question on this article, Nora, and I may not have picked this up before, but is this same developer redeveloping the adjacent plaza? And have you
No.
seen?
No.
No, so the owner of the adjacent plaza has asked to be considered as part of this zoning change as well as the Obed Baker House. And the planning board thought that that was a good idea to encourage the redevelopment of that adjacent plaza.
All right, so, but, okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
There's no plan in place for redeveloping that plaza. The hope is that by putting this zoning overlay district over it, the property owner would have the incentive necessary to redevelop it. We have discussed with that property owner and he is interested in doing that, but there's no proposal at this point.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, well, let's put up Planning Board Article 4 and let's be sure this is the correct language before we take any action on it. So Jim, if you want to do that.
That is not,
Okay.
that is not complete. So Abby sent an email to Jane on March 10th. It included her memo, and then it included a document that's titled Zoning Amendment Articles for Annual Town Meeting.
They have all of that, Nora.
So the language that's in that document, that's the full language of the article. What you are looking at here is the description of the article that is in the warrant summary, but it is not the article language.
So it would not be appropriate for us to vote on this if we don't have all the article language, Pat?
You have the article language in the memo that was
Yep.
sent. It's titled Zoning Amendment Articles for Annual Town Meeting. There's a document that's actually the language. So if you have that document in front of you for Planning Board Article 4.
We don't want Jim to read the whole thing, though. Or Tom to read the whole thing, though.
I've been called worse.
So if you look at page 24 of the 28-page document that has the article language, Article 4 is on page 24 and it goes on to page 25.
So we are not going to read all of that into the record unless town council tells us that we need to do that.
Well, I think you have to have a firm understanding of exactly what you're voting on.
Yes. So what I was going to suggest is we put it up on the screen.
That's
so
fine.
Everybody sees exactly what we are voting on.
Nora, can you share that screen? Can you share that? Nora?
Can I, do you want me to, let me get it onto my screen?
Yes.
It's going to take.
Well,
me
she's
just
doing
a
that. Can I
minute.
ask a question? Then I hate to do this, but Planning Board Article 2 that we already voted on.
Yeah.
I would assume this is just a description too, and not the actual language, right?
I think we have to go back, George. I don't think.
That's what that's why I'm raising the issue, okay?
I agree. I think you're right. I think we can.
So for 2, 3, I know we're holding 3, but for 2, 4, and 5, if we need to see the language put up on the screen, we probably need to redo 2, Planning Board 2.
I think we do. Patrick, don't you agree on that?
I don't have it in front of me, but it sounds like we should at least take a look to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this memo, Nora, there are proposed language changes in red. That's what we're being asked to consider, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll having to do it.
I'm trying to share my screen now.
Okay, Mike just did.
Okay, all
So
right.
You
what
too,
are
Laura.
you
Yes,
sharing?
that is the document.
So tell us what you're sharing here.
So this is Article 4 that shows the zoning amendment relative to expansion of non-conforming uses. And you'll see at the top, there's the description of the article, and then sections 1. Let me see how many sections there are. It's just that one section afterwards that actually shows the text language change. So the article is asking for an amendment of section 4.5.3.3. And the specific amendment is shown below. The red are the changes to the existing bylaw. The black is the way the bylaw reads today.
Okay, I see. So this is not that what was presented to the commission in the past has been changed. It is just that you are now showing us the red line of the actual document. Am I
Correct.
correct about that?
That's
Okay.
correct. And it's the same red line that was
Okay.
shown to you at your hearing on March 1st.
Okay, so does that help commission members to understand? There have been no changes in this since it was presented to us and since we've discussed it. It's just that this document is the complete document that redlines the changes. Does that help people?
It does.
You're
Okay,
talking about planning board Article 4, Diane?
yes,
Okay. Do you want comment on it?
yes, please.
Okay, so the description of that article I think needs to be changed. It says right now zoning amendment relative to expansion of non-conforming uses and structures. If you look at the actual language that's being changed, it's only structures. So I think we should take uses out because that is misleading to the town in terms of the scope of this article. We shouldn't describe the article as amending the zoning law relative to non-conforming uses and structures when the actual change only makes changes relative to non-conforming structures.
So I'm going to ask town council again. Is it in the purview of the Finance and Warrant Commission to make changes to the warrant articles that we have been given to vote on?
And not the article, just the description of the article.
I don't believe it is. You have to vote up or down on the article itself. The description that goes before town meeting is something that the planning board has put forth to you. But that's something you can ask the planning board to consider to change the description for town meeting purposes.
Perfect.
And the planning board could make that change at their next zoning hearing, which is on 9th at the same time as your FinCom hearing. So if you wanted to make that request for them to change the title and you wanted to wait to vote on this, they could discuss changing the title at your next FinCom hearing.
But they're not. So they meet at the same time as we do, but it's not a joint meeting.
It's a concurrent meeting.
It's a concurrent meeting.
Because the planning board expects to respond to your concerns that you raise about articles. They did this on March 1st as well. They had their own zoning hearing at the same time as yours so that they could act on the fly and respond to your comments with changes if changes were appropriate.
Nora, we could also vote on this, pass on that recommendation, and the one word removal could be considered and potentially followed through.
Yes.
Yes, Pat, how would that work?
Well, the description is, the important thing is the warrant article itself describing the zoning change. The description of it is not what's voted on at town meeting. It's the warrant article itself.
Okay. Okay, so then I think I might be hearing something different. It seems to me that we could vote on the warrant article without even raising the description.
I'm not sure that I agree with that.
Okay.
That's stretching it a little bit.
Well,
Listen, I think we're better off being brutally honest about it, to going back to square one and making sure you have the right things in front of you so that you can make a knowingly and informed vote. I think it's bad practice to try and do it kind of the halfway way that it seems we're working on tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that, but my concern that we are coming up with here is that a member of FinCom has suggested changes in the description of the warrant article. And that has to go back to the planning board.
Yes, it does.
And so the planning board is meeting concurrent with our last meeting, where we are hearing all of the budget articles. So I am concerned from a practical perspective about sending a change to the description back to the planning board and having it be back to us in one form or another. They may agree with the change, they may not, for our last meeting to vote on it.
And if they agree with the change, they'll make the change at that hearing and you
Right.
could vote to approve it, changed as you're requesting. And if they disagree with the change, you can vote to disapprove it if you so choose.
And
I think it'll change, and I can't imagine the planning board not agreeing that language should be altered. Because if you read the text of their amendment, they are only speaking about changes to this, to non-conforming structures. So I see that as a ministerial change that I think the planning board would vote to change and ask you to approve it as changed.
And I also do not like the idea of actually voting on a red line document. You should have a hard document in front of you.
Both. Yeah, right.
I just.
So we used to provide documents that did not show the red line, and a previous Finance and Warrant Commission asked for the change so that the documents now do show the red line to make voters understand very clearly what is being changed. So the article, it's not a red line document, it's an article that shows changes to the bylaw in red line. We've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years now.
Nor I believe the planning board has a meeting and Abby McCabe, who's left town employee, was just on the chat function, and they have a meeting on the 22nd where the planning board can address this. So
Oh, great. Okay, so the planning board does have a meeting before our next meeting.
Yes.
They have
Excellent.
they do.
Can I make a suggestion then? And we may have to go back and do this with planning board too, but give the planning board the opportunity to go back and confirm they're comfortable with the description and give us the language that we'd actually be voting on. And if we've been doing the red line version for the last couple of years, that would seem appropriate to me. But I think we ought to do is sort of back up and Pat, let me ask you, what's the procedure for us? We've already voted on planning board too. How do we back that up to make sure we see the stuff in front of us?
So I would suggest you make a motion for reconsideration on planning board 2 and change your vote and ask the planning board to reconsider it and to finalize language for you.
All right, if I make that motion though, what am I, when I say reconsideration, so we're not rejecting it.
No, you are not rejecting it. So the motion should perhaps say something like, I move to reconsider planning board article 2 so that we can finalize both the descriptive language and the language of the warrant article so that it's correct and we can consider it at the March 29th meeting. This is not a vote
Pat,
on this.
You took the words right out of my mouth. So that's the motion I want to make. Okay.
And you could probably do that by saying so moved as the words from town council.
Okay, so moved the words from town council. So do we need to, I make the motion for reconsideration as so moved by town council?
As stated by town council.
Okay, for planning board article number 2, okay?
Second.
Okay, so Jane, I guess you have to do a roll call.
Well, we need to see if there's any discussion about that. Is there any discussion about the thought that planning board article 2, which is the zoning amendments relative to permitting and approval of solar arrays? Now that's the one we'd already voted on. So the motion before us is that we reconsider that vote and send it back to the planning board to be sure that we have the correct language for all of the planning board articles. That's what I understand to be the proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's what you're being asked to vote on. Is there any other comments or thoughts about that?
I want to make a quick comment. If somebody could throw planning board 2 article up on the screen and just have Nora give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. We're kicking it back without knowledge of whether that's accurate or not.
Okay, let's do that.
I can pull it up. The description that I read earlier or the
Yes.
long version? Okay.
The description that you read earlier. And if Nora, real quick, if this is a, hey, that's not what you should be voting on, then great. I think following through with this vote makes sense.
So this one is just like the others that we just read. That's the title, but it doesn't have the section of the bylaw that gets changed. All of the sections of the bylaw that are in the article that will go to town meeting are in the document with the red line. So planning board article 2 is much, much longer than that.
Right.
That's only
So,
the introduction language.
right.
And is this the correct summary of planning board article 2?
Yes.
So I guess
So-
then again, reiterating the question, if we're going to ultimately, on the 28th, if we're going to vote on the same description, we've all seen the red lines. Would that vote still hold water, or do we need to push this one back with everything else?
Mike, I think it's better to push everything back because we've had a bit of confusion tonight. That way we will give the planning board the opportunity to confirm they're comfortable with the summary. We've made one suggestion, and that way we have a much cleaner process all the way through, okay?
Awesome.
My recommendation.
Understood.
Okay.
Any other comments on that?
I would agree with George, especially since this needs to, if we do pass it, it needs Attorney General review. We've got to be above board on everything.
Awesome. Thank you for the clarification.
Jane, you want to put us all back up again?
Sure. I was going to ask about the 2 select board articles that we.
I'm okay. I just reviewed Select Board 4 and I'm okay with it.
Okay, there's 4. That's good.
Yes.
Great. And there's 1 or 2 rather.
Nora, that you wrote that.
Yes, that's the complete
That's
article.
good too. Yes.
Okay,
Okay, cool.
great, good.
Coming back up.
All right, well, I was feeling so proud of how everything we've accomplished, but let's go back to the motion before us then. Are there any?
We need a second on that?
I already did. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks, Mike. Okay.
So are there any other comments on the motion before us? No? Okay,
The motion is to reconsider, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Without
and one comment, Diane, I actually did compare the description that Tom read with the language that's in the memo that Abby sent, and it is different. The language that Abby sent has 4 additional words in it, quote, as set forth below, unquote. So we should go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on that? All right, Jane, do you want to
Yes.
do a
Bill,
roll call on that motion,
yes.
which is send it back?
This is on the motion to reconsider.
Yes.
That's the motion. Planning Board Article 2 reconsidered motion. Bill.
Yes, reconsider.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Georgelle,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Mike.
Another yes.
All right, Jane?
Yes, that was, yep. that was
Okay,
good.
so let's summarize where we are, if I have it correctly. We have voted to unanimously approve Select Board Article 2 and Select Board Article 4. We have not voted on any planning board article. And our request for the planning board is to send us a complete package, updated language and information so that that can be distributed to the members. And at our next meeting, we will vote on all of the planning board articles, including the planning board Article 1, where we expect some more information.
Yes.
And it is our hope that the planning board will be able to consider our request to change the description of one of those articles prior to our final public hearing and vote.
Yes.
Is that all right?
That's exactly it.
Okay, so then at our next meeting, we will be hearing from Pam, who is going to give us all the budget articles. And once we hear from her, we will move again into deliberation and votes. Once you've had a chance to ask her questions, obviously, all of that sort of stuff. We will move into, it'll be our final meeting. We will move into deliberation and votes on all of the budget articles, all of the planning board articles, and the one select board article that you heard about tonight that is brand new, and the 2 citizen petitions where we expect to get some more information.
Yes.
So that is what we will vote on in our last meeting. Did I summarize that correctly?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anyone have any comments, thoughts, questions about any of that?
I would just like to ask that the planning board, the planning board send us all of those changes back prior to the select board information on Article 1. So don't wait for everything to be bundled together, but send us as soon as you can the information on all of the planning boards so that we can consider it.
So you'll get, so I will ask the planning board on the 22nd to make the one change that you've requested. I believe it was to Article 4. All of the other language I expect to be as shown. That section, I think it was on Article 3 maybe, that had language for initial discussion purposes. I will also ask them to remove that language. Other than that, I expect the language for the articles to be exactly as you've seen before, and I will send it to Jane on the 23rd. So if they discussed it on the 22nd, I'll send it to you on the 23rd.
That is, Nora, to confirm planning board Article 3, the zoning amendments relative to property on High Street is the way you
Yes.
want to think about that.
Okay.
And Jane, when's our last meeting?
The 29th.
29th. Okay, good. That should give everybody enough time to think about that all. Okay, Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, now that we're lifting all COVID restrictions, any sense of whether we're going to have our final deliberations in person, or is it going to be more Zoom?
Do we want to take a vote on that? I would certainly go for in person, but I know I might be in a minority. Is there anyone who feels strongly that it should not be in person?
It would be more easier if it were Zoom for flexibility. It's just a lot easier and it just makes life a lot easier.
Okay.
I favor
think
Zoom.
deliberations are a little easier in person instead of looking for hands and body language.
Yeah.
Do it.
I agree, Jim, but I think we just need to accommodate everybody. We can't do a
Hybrid.
what do you call it? Can't do a hybrid. That doesn't work at all. We tried it. It doesn't work. So, you know, if there are people who really feel like they either can't get there or are not comfortable, then I think we need to stick with the Zoom. Any other comments on that? Let Jane know if you want to, but I think that's where we probably are going to land. All right. Anything else for tonight?
Diane, just publicly to say that we're not going to meet tomorrow night.
Oh, we're not going to meet tomorrow night.
Yeah, just so that we can publicly mention that. And I think that's it. We did the minutes, so I think we're good.
Okay, motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry, motion to adjourn?
I
Chris?
did.
And who's second?
Alex.
Alex, thank you. Bill,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
8:56, motion to adjourn.
Thank you all. Have a
Great
great
job.
week.
Good night, all.
Good night.